Hi, my name is Jordan, and I will be presenting Chapter 1, Learning Theory. In this presentation, I will focus on pages 9 through 14, which focuses on the biological roots of learning theory. I chose to focus on the biological roots of learning theory because I'm a bio major, and so I find the connection between biology and psychology to be very interesting. So, learning theory is a topic that was kind of discovered when scientists were learning how reflexes worked. And this idea began with Descartes, who was a philosopher, and the idea further developed in the mid 1700s. The book actually used the date of the 1750s. And this idea developed when scientists began to estimate the speed of neurotransmissions and when they were learning about reflex actions. And this came about also when they were learning about the electricity. And so in 1866, um, the reflexes of the brain was published. And so during this time, mental processes could be analyzed in terms of physiological mechanisms. And so it was believed that thoughts were responses. And so this was a big development in psychology and biology for the time. And it was believed in the reflex phenomenon, which is known as inhibition. And so then in 1859, we know that Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species, which is a very important book both in biology and psychology. And in this book, he gave his theory of evolution that was debated and ridiculed for years. He discovered really the incredibly important idea of evolution and natural selection. And he discussed how the human mind had evolved from animals and how the human mind, is now separate from our, animal ancestors. And so the early comparative psychologists attempted to trace the evolution of the human mind by following the mental lives of the animals, as Darwin had suggested in his book. So one supporter of the idea of evolution had discussed how this could be a linear process in which all life evolves from the simple to the complex. So he believed that you have one animal and this animal leads to evolution in which another animal evolves, and it's kind of like point A to point B. However, Darwin noted that there is no straight line of progression to evolution, but rather many branches extend to make a tree of descendants that evolve from one original parent species. So this idea was kind of refuted. C. Lloyd Morgan took a more conservative approach to studying the mental abilities of animals. He believed that his pet dog kind of lacked the intelligence. He discussed throwing a piece of food or a toy over a fence in which there was enough space between the fence posts for the dog to go, through the fence to get to this object. However, the dog didn't have the spatial awareness to realize that it could go through the fence, and so it stopped when it got to the fence. And so he developed the law of parsimony, which is also known as Morgan's canon. And for an example of behavior should not be explained by a complex high-level mental process. It could be explained with a simpler one. And so this was his big contribution to learning behavior. And in the book, it did say that this would be a concept that will be further explained in a later chapter. And then another major development was the use of the puzzle box, in which a cat was placed inside a puzzle box, and it had to learn to open a latch to access food. And so this used the law of effect. When a response is followed by satisfaction, an SR connection is strengthened. When it's followed by discomfort, the SR association is weakened. And so over time, the cats did learn to open the lever and to get to the food. However, it was a slow learning process, and this was a very important contribution to this learning. And then the common, well-known example is Pavlov and his reflex studies with digestion. He used dogs to show the relationship between the digestive system and the nervous system. I'm sure this is a study that you have all heard about before, where he used the bell to alert the dogs that there was going to be food. He developed what he called the psychic reflex, which we now know today, or what we call today, is the conditioned response. And for his work, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So that is the end of the section that was titled in the book, Biological Roots. There were 4 main sections of this chapter, so I encourage you to look at the other 3, and good luck on your quiz for this chapter.